Welcome to Mining Over Canada. Join the Canadian Securities Exchange and our partners in a first-hand look into our country's vast mining landscape.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mining Over Canada, Canadian Securities Exchange's special about the really special industry of mining. My name is Mark Francis. I'm based in Calgary, and today I have with me someone I've known since 1992. I first met Pamela Schwann when she was banging rocks for the Saskatchewan Geological Survey, and now Pam Schwann is the head of the Saskatchewan Mining Association. And I get to keep running into you from time to time, Pam, as well.
It's a pleasure, Mark. I'm really pleased to be here. And as we were talking about earlier, all important things about mining eventually come around to Flin Flon. So pleased to have been a part of that.
Indeed. And I'm sorry we won't see you at the Saskatchewan Geological Open House this year. It's my favorite conference of the year.
Yeah, the Saskatchewan Geological Survey does a great job every year, and last year was their 50th. So I'm really happy that they were able to celebrate that last year. And I'm sure that next year things will be a little different, and they'll have crews back in the field, and there'll be another open house next year.
Absolutely. And I guess we should give a specific shout out to Gary Delaney and the whole team at the Saskatchewan Geological Survey. They do a great job, from the field work they do, which helps industry, to the conference they run, to how they promote Saskatchewan. So they do a fabulous job. And in regards to mining in Saskatchewan, talk about the breadth of minerals and geography involved.
Sure, and maybe I'll just pick up on your point. I think, the Saskatchewan Geological Survey sort of epitomizes how the government of Saskatchewan values the mining sector and the exploration sector in Saskatchewan, and they're just always very accessible, always interested in what they can do to make Saskatchewan a great place to invest, and also a place where they look to change policies or modify policies to grow the sector. So in Saskatchewan, we've had a really long history of mineral production that started with coal mines for mom and pop operations down in the south, and then in gold mines up in the far Athabasca region, which is now famous for uranium. But Saskatchewan is the only jurisdiction in Canada that leads the world in production of a mineral, and that's potash. We produce 30% of the world's potash, and we're second leading global producer of uranium. So Saskatchewan has a special place in terms of mineral production in Canada. And so those two are well known, but we have a diversity of other minerals in Saskatchewan, like our thermal coal. We have one gold producer operating right now that's produced over 1.2 million ounces over its lifetime. But historically, we've had a number of gold producers. We've also had platinum, palladium production. We've had copper and zinc production, not just in the Flin Flon, but also over on the north shore of Lac La Ronge, lead production. And then we've got great diamond potential. We've got one of the world's largest kimberlite, diamond-bearing kimberlite deposits that's under evaluation right now, and we're very optimistic that soon we're going to be leading the country in another commodity basket with that. And then we have some emerging potential with lithium and also with cobalt that are keen for the new battery minerals era. And the Saskatchewan Research Council has got a new rare earth element processing lab that the government of Saskatchewan is also just investing in. So while we've got a great history, we're also looking forward into some of these new minerals that are becoming more critical with a greener outlook on mining.
That's very good. And I think what you've highlighted indirectly is that Saskatchewan routinely is in the top 5 places in which to invest in terms of its ranking by the Fraser Institute. So let's talk a little more about all of these minerals. Tremendous breadth of minerals, and throughout all of Saskatchewan, which probably leads to greater understanding and support by the population as a whole. Some of the new age minerals are critical to technology, but some of the other minerals that Saskatchewan produces, some of the more traditional ones, are also critical to humans and what we might call a post-Stone Age life. Could you talk about the relevance of potash and some of the other minerals that Saskatchewan produces?
Sure. Well, right now, Both potash and uranium are identified as critical minerals on the U.S. Critical minerals list, and that's, countries that are trying to ensure they are self-sufficient in the supply chain of minerals. So, and Canada and the U.S. have an agreement on the development of critical minerals. So that bodes well for Saskatchewan. But why they are classified as critical minerals is obviously because they have an importance. And for potash, that's being able to help provide food security to the world. When we have a growing population, it's going to be over 9 billion by 2050. On less arable land, we need to ensure agricultural practices are more productive, and fertilizer plays an important role in that, particularly potash. So our long-term fundamentals for potash are excellent. And on the uranium side, even though the markets have not been great, we're finally seeing the inventory draw down. We're seeing a lot of renewed interest in particularly small nuclear reactors or small modular reactors to provide clean energy. Again, in a growing population where energy density is important in high populated areas, you need to be able to have a baseload source of energy that's clean. And so that pretty much leaves you with nuclear, which has a great safety record as well. So we're seeing a lot more public interest and public response to small modular reactors and the role that uranium can play in providing clean energy for the future. And in Canada, we often don't realize that 60% of Ontario's power generation is powered by nuclear reactors that's fueled by Saskatchewan uranium. So it's a great story about how Saskatchewan uranium can contribute to clean energy, but also to the important medical uses that uranium is, whether it's on radioisotopes, X-rays, imaging, any sort of treatments, food processing even. So it's got multiple uses, but by far the most important is being able to provide clean energy to the world.
Right. And what else makes Saskatchewan a great place to invest? It seems to have a stable tax regime. Is that right?
Well, not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
That's one thing that we're working on. Like I said, we've got very good relations with the government. They recognize the importance of the mining sector as a base and primary generator of wealth. But sometimes you get the sense that people think the mining sector will always be here because it's been here for such a long time, and they don't realize the increasing cost pressures and the increasing global factors that are taken into account for investment. So I think we have definite room for improvement on the tax structure, whether it's the corporate cap tax structure or whether it's our royalty structure. In Saskatchewan, we pay more royalties to governments, both and taxes to governments, both provincial and federal, than any other jurisdiction in Canada, even though we're only 4th in the country in terms of our value of mineral production. So we have a ways to go on that, but it's because we have such world-class deposits that we're able to attract that investment. But we have a ways, I think, to go on that file.
Okay. Well, that's frank, and that's important. And one of the costs you mentioned indirectly, costs do increase. Environmental stewardship has a price, but of course, industry has been improving very steadily since I first became engaged with the mining industry 30 years ago. Can you talk a little bit about the improvements that have been made over the last couple of decades in environmental stewardship?
Sure. Safety performance and environmental performance are very important to the mining sector, and a lot of attention and focus is put on both for good reason. But over the years, we've seen a lot of improvements in terms of energy efficiency, which can be challenging when you have facilities that are 50 years old to be looking at retrofitting them. And our potash mines are 50 years old now, 40 to 50 years old. So it's different than a greenfield mine where you can build some of those efficiencies in. So, but nonetheless, our potash production is made with 70% fewer emissions than our global competitors in Belarus, China, and Russia. So we're doing very well on that front, and we need the governments to recognize that we are doing very well on that and give us some credit rather than penalize us on that front. But also in terms of usage of water, and whether it's on the processing end, how we're reutilizing water. So attention is paid to all sorts of different environmental factors, and it's a continuous improvement effort. At the end of the day, you wonder sometimes how much cost benefit is being derived from these environmental improvements, but it's definitely something that companies continue to decrease their environmental footprint.
Right. And I guess that would go to tailings as well, because it used to be 50, 100 years ago, tailings weren't taken seriously. And now tailings are taken pretty seriously by industry. And there aren't any outstanding tailings issues in Saskatchewan, I don't think, are there?
No, we've actually been leading the way on a lot of the tailings area. We have, we're fortunate in Saskatchewan. It's generally fairly flat in the south, and so we don't really have concerns, or we don't have risks. I shouldn't say we don't have concerns. We don't have risks related to failures of dams like we saw in South America. And in northern Saskatchewan, all the tailings facilities that are being used right now are engineered in-pit facilities. So there's very good control on the water flow around the tailings pits to make sure they're not going into the pits, and everything is contained. So tailings are always on the radar as a risk, but they're being very well managed. And as we move forward, we've got one new project for uranium that's actually looking at putting their tailings underground. That's NextGen's Arrow deposit. That's what they've got planned for that. So we're always seeing improvements and reduced risk to environment as well as
Right.
safety. Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. And in Saskatchewan, the Aboriginal communities are very supportive of mining. Can you talk about the engagement with the Aboriginal community and its relevance in terms of employment?
Sure. We've had a long history with Indigenous communities, whether it's employment and increasingly so on the business side from the purchase of goods and services. That goes back to 40, 50 years with the start of uranium and the Clough Lake hearing, where it was determined that uranium mining was good to go in northern Saskatchewan, but we need to ensure that northern communities benefited from that. So from that, we had great leadership from the companies, people like Bernard Michel, Jerry Grandy, that looked at, and now their successors, Tim Gitzel, Jim Corman, de Saint-Martin, that make sure that communities are benefiting. So employment in the mines has been really important. We're sort of the leading employer of Indigenous people in Canada from an industrial perspective. At the northern mine sites, almost 48% of all the workers are from the northern communities, which are primarily Indigenous. No other site in Canada that I'm aware of has that high record. So we're leading there. And we're also leading in terms of the purchase of goods and services. We did a survey in 2017 that looked at our supply chain, because we've got a great homegrown supply chain all across the board. And we had purchased, I think, $2.9 billion worth of goods and services in 2017. And of that, $650 million at a minimum was purchased from Indigenous owned companies. So when you think about what that does to building capacity in those communities, it's huge. So really good engagement for both employment and business services. And their, Indigenous communities and their businesses are just really important business partners for the Saskatchewan mining companies and the exploration companies. And going forward, I think that's going to be even more important when they can benefit from what's happening around them and become part of the economy. Those communities become your allies too. And I think we're in a solid place in Saskatchewan on that.
That's excellent. So let's look forward a little bit and talk about the innovation. You mentioned SRC, Saskatchewan Research Council's new lab or new facility to process rare earth elements. And we've actually interviewed Appia, James Sykes and Appia Energy as part of Mining Over Canada. So tell us about what you see in the future and the innovation that's going on in Saskatchewan.
Sure. Well, certainly the SRC labs are very important, and not from, I wouldn't say a Saskatchewan perspective, although they're hugely important for uranium, but from a global perspective, the diamond processing they do in Saskatoon at their lab those diamonds come from all over the world, not just Saskatchewan projects. I anticipate that's the same with the rare earth. We don't produce any rare earths right now, but whenever somebody is producing, the idea is that they would come to Saskatchewan with that. So that's part of the innovation, but we've been innovative in so many ways. The whole concept of potash solution mining developed in Saskatchewan, the ability to put a shaft through, basically the quicksand Blairmore formation to keep people safe and access the potash is part of the long story. The ability to remote mine the highest grade uranium mines in the world and keep the workers' safety, that's all part of the innovation story. So now what we're looking at also is innovation in safety in terms of proximity detection to areas that may be high risks. So the innovation continues, and that will, and certainly as we move into more digital mining and more use of artificial intelligence, that's going to just get, I think, a sharper edge onto it.
I'm going to ask another similar question and just come at it from a slightly different way. So Pam, I've heard that some of the uranium deposits are so high grade that they're actually dangerous and even have to be diluted in the mill. How does the industry deal with that?
Time, distance, and barrier protections, the fundamental safety measures. So when the grades are very high, people are not anywhere near the ore, and it's done by remote mining, where they're accessing ore that's above them, and they're in safe chambers from a mining perspective. The ore is all contained during transit to the milling facilities. And the milling facilities have a number of precautions, including a lot of concrete that acts as a barrier against the radiation. And they do dilute the ore, actually, with some of their waste, just to have a more constant supply as well. But yeah, you wish some of the other gold mines had that problem. They were so high grade.
Yeah, and I don't think they dilute their ore if they did.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. Well, and so Saskatchewan, there in the middle of the continent, the cold north has innovated in remote mining. That's really an interesting story. And I know that Saskatchewan innovation far outstrips people's imagination because a cousin of mine was involved, actually a great uncle, I should say, in using nuclear isotopes that was tied into the SRC to track nutrient uptake in plants, and it ended up triggering the zero tillage revolution. And that came out of Saskatchewan. And so the rest of the country doesn't associate Saskatchewan with this cutting edge scientific research, but it's been there.
That's an interesting linkage between potash and uranium right there. I didn't know about, so appreciate that, Mark.
Yes, indeed. Don Rennie, if you want to he's long since left us, but in any case, is there anything else you'd like to finish with here in closing to talk about what a great place Saskatchewan is for the mining industry?
I think we've covered lots of topics. We've got a public that's very supportive of us. Our public opinion surveys continuously show over 90% the public in Saskatchewan either support or are strongly supportive of the sector, think it's important. We've got good relations with the governments. We have good relations with Indigenous people. And so I think there's this realization that if mining is healthy, it will bring the boat up for everybody. What we need to keep working on is making sure that that message is understood at the federal level as well. Our companies are benefiting all sorts of society through their mineral production. And we really need to be championed for that, to make sure there's actually more mineral production coming out of Canada, and that we're building on our success from a natural resource perspective, because the world needs what we're producing, whether it's in Saskatchewan and other parts of Canada. And if we don't produce it, somebody else will. And those other jurisdictions simply don't have the safety, environmental, or social record that we have. So I think it's important that we build up the industry in Saskatchewan and get that investment into Canada.
That's a great message, Pam. And not only is Saskatchewan a great place in which to invest in mining, but it's a great place to visit, and I really enjoy the collegial spirit at the Saskatchewan Geological Open House, and I look forward to seeing you next year in early December.
Absolutely, Mark. And you can actually join us virtually December 2nd and 3rd for our 12th annual Mining Supply Chain Forum. We're going virtual this year, but it's another great opportunity to find out what's happening more in the mining space in Saskatchewan. So I'll just put that plug in.
What's the website that people should visit?
www.mscf.ca.
Very good. Thank you very much, Pam.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Good to speak with you.